All right, today we're tackling a wild story. It's about a ruler who had everything you could want: influence, control, real power. But his story takes this bizarre, shocking turn that actually teaches us something profound about what power even is. So, let's get right into it.
No, you heard that right. That is not a metaphor. That's the real, central question of this whole explainer. So how on earth does something like that happen? Well, to figure it out, we've got to piece together the events that led to one of the most gruesome downfalls in history. And it all kicks off not with a victory, but with a huge public flop.
Okay, so let's meet our main character, King Herod Agrippa I. And when our story starts, he is not having a good day. In fact, he's in the middle of a full-blown political meltdown, a PR disaster that was completely his own fault.
So here's what went down. Herod's trying to score some political points, right? First, he executes the Apostle James. And hey, the crowd loves it. So he thinks, this works, and decides to double down. He arrests Peter, who is an even bigger deal. He hypes up this grand public execution, and then, the night before the big show, Peter just vanishes, miraculously escapes, and suddenly, Herod looks weak and foolish.
So what do you do when you're a king who's just been publicly embarrassed? You get out of town, fast. He bolts from the capital, Jerusalem, and makes a 100-kilometer trek over to the coastal city of Caesarea. And let's be clear, this is not a vacation. He is literally running away from his failure. He's desperate for a comeback, any way to look powerful again.
And it's there, in Caesarea, that he finds his chance. A new conflict is brewing, and it gives him an opportunity to show everyone he's still the boss. But his weapon this time, it's not an army. It's something way more fundamental: food.
Okay, so to get what happens next, you have to understand the power dynamic here. On one side, you've got Tyre and Sidon. These are rich, bustling port cities, but they have a huge weakness. They can't feed themselves. They have to import their food. And guess who controls the food supply? That's right, Herod's kingdom. It's the region's breadbasket. He's got the grain. And in the ancient world, if you control the food, you control pretty much everything.
And he knows it. So when some dispute pops up, he plays his trump card. He just cuts them off, turns off the food supply. Boom. Just like that, all the money in Tyre and Sidon is basically worthless. Because, you can't eat gold. They are staring starvation right in the face.
Now, to really put this in perspective, the source gives us a great modern-day comparison. Think about South Korea's supply of animal feed. They only produce about 20% of it themselves. A whopping 80% has to be imported. Now, just imagine, what happens if that 80% supply line gets severed overnight? Total chaos, right? That is the level of crisis Herod just created for his neighbors.
So, this complete desperation is what leads us to the climax of the story. The people from Tyre and Sidon are backed into a corner. They know they have to give in to Herod, and they know it's not just about getting the grain back. It's about putting on a show. A big public spectacle designed to stroke Herod's very fragile ego.
So how do you even get in the same room with an angry king? Well, you don't go to the front door. You find a back channel. They go to Herod's right-hand man, his chamberlain, a guy named Blastus. The source implies that a little persuasion, probably a big bribe, was involved. And just like that, Blastus sets up a big public event. Herod will give a speech, and the quote-unquote peace deal will be sealed.
And Herod? Oh, he decides to make an entrance. This isn't just any speech. The story goes that he shows up wearing a robe made entirely of silver. Can you picture that? In the morning sun, he would have been literally dazzling, glittering like he wasn't even human. The whole thing was pure theater, designed for maximum effect.
So Herod gives his speech, and when he's done, the crowd goes wild. But they don't just clap. They start shouting this: "This is the voice of a god, not of a man." Wow. Just imagine being Herod. You've gone from total humiliation to being called a god. This is everything he wanted. He's powerful. He's revered. He's back.
But hold on. Was any of this for real? The source we're looking at says, probably not. This wasn't some spontaneous moment of worship. It was what you'd call a mobilized crowd. Think plants, people who were organized, maybe even paid, to be there and to say exactly what the king wanted to hear. It was all a setup, a performance for a performer.
And right there, at that absolute peak of his fake glory, when he's soaking it all in, the story takes a hard right turn. We go from this spectacle of power to something straight out of a horror movie, and it happens instantly.
So what was the final straw? According to the source, it wasn't just his pride. His fatal error was this. He heard them call him a god, and he went along with it. He took that praise for himself. In the worldview of this story, that glory belongs to God alone. By accepting it, he crossed a sacred line. And in that instant, the text says, an angel of the Lord struck him down.
And his end is described in just a few brutal words. He was eaten by worms and died. That's it. Think about the whiplash there. 1 minute, he's a glittering god on a stage. The next, he's a decaying body. The contrast couldn't be more shocking, and that's the whole point. It strips away the illusion of godhood to reveal the gruesome reality of his mortality. Okay, so what is the takeaway from this absolutely bizarre story? It's more than just a simple warning against getting a big head. The real lesson here, according to the source, is about a fundamental mistake we can all make when it comes to power, and pretty much anything else we have.
The source has a name for Herod's big mistake, the blasphemy of ownership. And here's the core idea. Nothing we have, not our skills, our money, our influence, is truly ours. We're just looking after it. We're stewards or caretakers. The huge fatal error happens when you forget you're just the manager and start acting like you're the absolute owner of it all.
And if you look back, that's Herod's journey in a nutshell. First, he controlled the grain. Then, he started to believe the grain was his. From there, it's not a big jump to start thinking of yourself as the source of life, right? So he accepts the praise as if he were a god. He completely forgot he was just the steward. And that, the story tells us, is exactly why he fell.
And that brings it all back to us, doesn't it? It's easy to judge the king in the shiny robe, but the real challenge of this story is to turn that question inward. Our jobs, our money, our talents. Where in our own lives do we maybe act a little too much like the owner and not enough like the steward? It's a tough question, but definitely one worth thinking about. Thanks for digging into this one with us.